Hey guys, here today to talk about director Krzysztof Kieślowski. Now he is just really one of the most fascinating and original directors I've ever discovered. He's a man who very much wears spirituality on his sleeve while telling very entertaining stories through his characters, and usually they face dilemmas that challenge their spirituality. And his films often explore how a person can find themselves again after having been through a challenge. I think that his films very much encourage facing challenges in life and grasping them, because that can unlock a lot of your best moments in a lot of ways, because you do find a newfound glory within yourself and a fresh understanding and outlook of life in general through spiritual understandings. And firstly, the Decalogue is the first big thing that he made. I know there's some all-time classics he's made before this. I've yet to see them. But he's made this and about 6 others I've seen him love dearly. So I gotta say something. The Decalogue he made. This trilogy was completed in 1989. This is literally a 10-hour odyssey that takes you through all the 10 commandments, step by step. And I'm gonna cover all 10 because all of them are worth mentioning and very original, very unique. Overall, this sums up to be one of the most masterful things I've ever seen in my life. Because this really just takes on every kind of spiritual dilemma a person could possibly imagine, really. And then it becomes unified whenever they find themselves again through complexion, really. And I think that there's a lot of just simplicity that Kieślowski is seeking within his characters, as the cameras are just really observing these people as they're just in situations that seem very ordinary, but then it's the way that it affects them. A lot of anxiety and a lot of fear, dread for what it can bring out of them. But yeah, this is just a very singular achievement, and it's just one of the best I've ever seen. So let's get into it, shall we? Decalogue I. First commandment of I am the Lord your God, thou shalt have no other gods before me. I was really floored by this the entire way through. I define myself entirely as spiritual, not religious, but I'm open and interested in all kinds of religion. I like to kind of come to a summation that closely resonates with, a spiritual knowing that's found within. And every man has to find that for themselves. Every person, really. This is just about a father who just has this unbreakable bond with his son. It's instantly captivating, the way that the whole story plays out. It's very gutting, and it kind of just does deal with this sort of wrestle of God and science in a lot of ways. And I think that the two really do come hand in hand. And I think that people might be closer to the God side, people are closer on the science side, but it's kind of coming to the same summation and knowing in the end. And I believe that meeting in those two fields, there really is a knowing that I think is met. I'm like I said, I'm not as far into the science end, but I certainly like to be around people who are science minded, because I know there is a genius that they know, and I can really connect and understand and kind of find a better state of myself in a lot of ways. And I like how this is explored, because you can kind of see where in this case, science, you're seeing a more science-minded person who is very challenged by a faith in God. He kind of comes to a way where he feels like science has failed him in a sense, because it kind of didn't really lead to a satisfying conclusion in his life. So he ends up seeking, God in a lot of ways. And it is an eternal question, really, that is endlessly wrestleable, because it's there's I believe again a kind of fine line of a knowing, which could be found through fantasy and through just grounded mysticism in a lot of ways, and then there's reality, which just in a lot of societal ways just cannot add up to what fantasy is in the end. It never really can meet each other coherently speaking. So it's almost how can one man find for himself how to overcome these obstacles and challenges and find a way to express his greatest glory without while knowing the burden of others in a lot of ways. That's ultimately a great challenge to face yourself, put yourself through. Decalogue II. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy glory in vain. And this is a very good slow burner. This is one that seems a bit aimless at times through the storytelling, but in the end, it really does elevate itself through its wonderful themes and just kind of questioning why we're so eager with our God complex. Why are we so eager to dominate other people? I know that's in human nature, and that's always just been a real challenge I personally have faced through through my walk in life. It's there is a real question of why is it people taking the responsibility to completely brainwash another person and to control and completely mold them into looking at life a certain way. I think there's a real tragedy living in that and seeing someone having to live under that particularly. There's a lot about that needs to be set free if you have to be under anything like that. Then we got Decalogue III, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honestly, I found the characters a bit irritating in this story. Like, it's a great theme, and I really love how it explores how there's like this couple is trying to repair one of their flaws, but it just feels like one night just cannot do the full repair for what the relationship needs in order to move forward. It's like Sabbath. It's really interesting. Yeah, and I really like the things it explores, but overall, it's not one of my personal favorites. Decalogue IV, honor thy father and thy mother. This is, I think, my favorite one thus far. Certainly one of the ones I think about the most in this whole series, because it goes with something that's ultimately very complicated in a moral sense, and it also is very challenging, I find, philosophically, in a sense of like an Ingmar Bergman film. Just the way the dialogue expresses just very harsh reality mixed with some fantasy, of like subtle, grounded fantasy elements here, and I feel like there's just something very controversial going on with all of this, and the way that like we honor societal roles in a lot of ways. I think this is a film I think to honor thy mother, thy father, metaphorically, really represents like a code, a societal code that really has to be met for everybody in the end. It's like a knowing, it doesn't have to affect your mood, but just kind of knowing that there is superiority out there, like knowing that you don't always have the platform in a lot of ways, I think is very necessary. You almost need something of a control within yourself, of a father figure and a mother figure, metaphorically. You don't have that always in reality, but you can always find that in yourself and find that metaphorically through storytelling and through people. It's pretty cool, I think, because it really makes you ponder in the end. It's like, who are you to be like the one here? Because nobody knows really. Like, we all could be in tune with the greater good, but we all are coming from it's always coming from one perspective. And it's up to everybody to decide for yourselves whether you like that perspective or want to live at that perspective, or if you'd rather not. Close off, no problem. So I think ideally speaking, if you love it, all the better. We'll hang out. Okay. Decalogue V, thou shalt not murder. This is really, they just keep getting better and better. This is one of the best ones because this really reminds me of like a Taxi Driver, Depths of a Madman. It's consistently brilliant from start to finish. It's just, I think it's the particular way it's directed that really fascinates me the most, because the filter slips are very particular, and they really remind me a lot of the best of like David Fincher, like in particular the film Zodiac. This movie is just so terrifying, and it shakes me to the core. I'm really, really glad he made this one. This is like a really intense thriller, basically. Like a psychological drama all the same that really examines a psychopath just really going off the rails and doing something insane, literally. The intimate details what really gets me. And again, the color schemes are just so odd, and I feel like there's a film that came out around the same time frame called The Vanishing, which I didn't like nearly as much as this, but it kind of reminded me of that kind of aesthetic. This was just elevated that to brilliance. I never knew it could be possible. It was certainly done, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And then we got Decalogue VI, thou shalt not commit adultery. So now we get into a real deconstruction of a love story, and this is like a really awkward, again, like kind of like another story like a Rear Window or Alfred Hitchcock films masterpieces we're doing, just kind of exploring a perverted, an innocent perverted dude just kind of getting himself into a situation. Then you ultimately kind of find a loving connection that's real, because it's almost like you watch it and it almost seems a little scummy at first, but then it's like the more you get to know the character, the more you'll love him. And I feel like I love all the unexpected turns it takes to the point where you just almost feel like really detached from anything negative about it, anything going on. And all the characters just really find love in moments in time, that's going to live in their lives forever, because it's just the moments they create are so beautiful and timeless. And it's almost just like, you can almost look at love through two angles. It's like, is it something to honor or is it something to throw away? I think the beautiful thing is it can be both, like that's love in the end. Whether, no matter what you got in the end, like anyone can find love in themselves and through others, it's all on how you do it and the ways you want to find that. Everyone has their own nirvana, I say, in the end. As long as we can get there and meet each other in some way. That's the end goal, I believe, of our time on Earth. We got Decalogue VII, thou shalt not steal. I really love how Kieślowski is able to just kind of change the gears so easily. Like, the characters you're pulling for, you don't really know who's good, who's bad, who's going to hold up in the end. Like, as far as resonation, sometimes you like them, and then it's like, who are you, dude? And he doesn't know that's so empathetic that you are, as a viewer, is very emotionally the entire way through. This is perhaps the most straightforward he did in storytelling. Like, it's a bit of a crime story that's not quite as groundbreaking as some of the previous exhibitions, but it's still really fantastic, and it does give me some Ingmar Bergman energy. It's like Ingmar Bergman doing a crime film, and aesthetic like Autumn Sonata. It's pretty cool. Here we got episode 8. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. This is kind of just a film. This one just really gets into regret, and I feel like this one didn't really do it in the best way because I think it just peaked way too early, and it just sort of revisits the past thing. I think the story itself is perfect, actually, but here's the problem. It's not even really directed. It's just entirely told by way of storytelling. It's almost like the life of Pi if you didn't have all that, imagination living behind it. And it just really wasn't that engaging pure way dialogue. I think it just needed a little bit more to it, honestly, just to really be a timeless one. But it still is interesting, and it's part of the series. So it's kind of like I see it as frankly as the intermission kind of breather between all the two more masterpieces to come. So Decalogue IX, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Ooh. And then I mean, that's the ultimate nightmare, I feel like. In my scenario, I'm like, dude, the biggest nightmare ever would be to honestly just bring any kind of covet to a wife and a man in general who's got a wife. That's an ugliest situation I could see. And I would never, ever want to do that. Sincerely promise. But this is a really beautiful story about how just really like a lot of silence and defining like how people kind of can find comfort within silence. I think that whenever you can share uncomfortable silence with other people, it really does bring a certain peace and understanding. And also can kind of just stare at each other without any anything strange or weird in the air. You both have a certain knowing, so you can just kind of live in that, eternally. I think that's really a cool concept and it's really interesting. But this is perhaps the most dramatic, film, because it's just like, it also kind of just gets into the perspective of jealousy, it's like, and, you have faith in someone, but then it's like, what if it's something you can't desire? You instantly have to find something else to hold on to overcome that, and that's something that every man has to find for themselves. But I think that you have to rise above like those kind of things, like desire for COVID and jealousy, because those are ultimately, the corruption of a man to express those. It's okay to feel that and to feel through infatuation, but it's very ugly to express it. You have to grow from a lot of those feelings, even though they're there. It's okay to feel like a lot of those feelings that could be, okay, that's an immature feeling, but the feeling is there still, and you can be creative with it rather than, make it a good thing rather than ugly and bad. Decalogue X. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods. And this is unexpectedly one of the greatest, most resonating hours I've ever seen in cinema. Because it really speaks to the idea of regret and just the way a person can let a relationship just fizzle right out. I think there's maybe a real intense depression and sadness that lives inside of a good thing fizzling out slowly. And I think that this is like just one of those films. It's like, what happens to a person when just a certain tie that maybe met a world at one point just no longer exists? The best you can do is just kind of continue to live life out and just, sort of hold on to the good the glory you learned from all that, but you find it in your own way and just sort of do them justice. It's like if someone really meant something to you, you just live and do justice, just like they would, the way that they made you feel at the time you were with them. It's just like you want to feel a smile, by making them smile, you smile, in a sense, metaphorically. Even if it's not real, you can still feel it. It's just like one of those films that's just really beautiful. It's just finding a reason to laugh and you just don't have anything to laugh at, and just it gets to a real extent of existentialism where you have to just kind of question the force, like, what is the point of all this? Why are we doing any of this? What is the driving force here? Why can't we just look back and just laugh at everything? Why can't we just look at things like a comedy and just chill and have a good time? That's sort of it seems like to me. This is a perfect conclusion. This is a perfect series, honestly. Even if there's a few episodes that are like 100%, it's just the overall experience and impact is so timeless and effort. Yeah, it's just really an effortlessly timeless work, I feel like. There's just so much deeply touching sentimentality involved. The experience I feel walking out of this really does feel like Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia, where it's just like a spiritual cleansing, in many ways. We get in 1991, The Double Life of Veronique. Now, Kieślowski, I think, for once, he kind of became too style over substance, I think. He doubled down really great with an atmosphere. This is very aesthetically strong because it has a lot of empty spaces, a lot of shots that are reflective, and just a lot of good sound design. Like, it just feels like it's haunted in a lot of ways, but it's also just very compelling and colorful, and there's something very peaceful about the whole atmosphere and experience of it. But there's a point where like the story just isn't really that interesting, I feel like, and it really just kind of all comes down to its effective style. Like, it kind of reminds me of something like a decent Nicholas Winding Refn film, where like it's very stylized, but I do enjoy the flow and harmony. It's just not. I will easily turn to about every other Kieślowski film. 1993, Three Colors Blue. This is the first part of his other big girl series. This is a trilogy of them. This is a thematic trilogy of films that just, finding cleanse and peace amongst the harsh world, simply. And this is one that really was resonating because it deals with just finding calm through death. And I believe the color blue really does represent a certain calm in the face of harshness, and the depth of just the cold world, really, and just finding a calm and comfort within that, and knowing. And it's just, there's something very sad of living in this entire film. Juliette Binoche is just such a subtle actress, and I feel like all the expressions of her character just really allow minimalism to come out. There's a lot of sad moments come out. It feels like, the blues really is living in this film. It just really has a great shine to it. And it just really, especially with the classical music and just the song sets of framing, it's on like a Kubrickian level of just, it feels very genius and groundbreaking. It's a great film. Then we have 1993, Three Colors White. And it's like easily my least favorite of that trilogy. I know there's Julie Delpy. She's easily my favorite part. She's easily the driving force of this because I love her so much, and especially in the before trilogy. But she really shines here just about equally. But it's just, unfortunately, everything around it's a bit dull. Nothing else really grabbed me. Just wanted to go back to watching before trilogy and see her in that. So it really is just like a downgrade, I think, from Blue in most ways. It's really boring. The story's kind of really dull and flat. Yeah, I'm here entirely for Julie Delpy, if I'm being completely honest. And the color schemes are occasionally like really great and good as they usually are. But I think it's a filler next to his grand masterpiece, his final film. I love this even more than Decalogue. The Three Colors Red. This is the greatest moment of the entire trilogy. Every frame of this is just genius, I think. Particularly magnificent from start to finish, I feel like. Every scene with Valentine and Joseph just really resonates and hits strongly at home because it has a very unique way of warming your heart. This is a story, again, it goes into like Rear Window Blue Velvet-esque territory, So they said this isn't a thriller, really, but it is just kind of like a bit of like a voyeurism going on from like a feminist perspective, meeting, like a very unusual kind of man, and then they really kind of form this beautiful bond together, and just like it turns out to be timeless and life-affirming for both of them. But I love how energetic this film is. There's a really subtle energy living in this. There's all these glorious shots of the phones, and it's just like the photo shoot scenes are just really perfect and intense. It's funny because it's like it's slow paced, but yet it flies by and it feels like it's like an hour long, but it's actually 2. But I feel like Kieślowski was building up to this film his entire career. A lot of the simplicity and desire for privacy. I think a person will crave privacy in their lives, especially when they feel a certain knowing within. And then it brings up all kinds of questions. It's like, is it really worth preserving our vision of perfectionism? Or is it okay to let loose and just be imperfect? Like, is there a model a status we need to hold for, in a societal way? And I feel like Kieślowski doesn't even give you an answer here. He just presents this perfect kind of scenario, and he sort of lets every person who watches this find it for themselves. A story where you really have to wrestle with your morals. You're in always situations where there is a sense of morality that's being questioned, and there are a lot of questions about like the implications that a person's actions can have. This is easily my favorite film of this director. I guess it's really, really brilliant. You could pause about any frame, and just the color schemes are just really perfect. It's about the best ending I've ever seen in a film. It's up there in the top 10, surely, because just the way that it's all paced out, it feels like literally his whole filmography was just building up to a moment right here. Like, this is everything the man was saying, visually speaking. It's not only visuals. There's really a minimal sense of dialogue outside of the scenes of Valentine and Joseph. Oh man, those scenes of dialogue and interactions are just really special. Like, they're on the depths of like lost in translation. It's pure beauty the entire way through. So this is a special film. Very, very brilliant director. So his filmography is one worth diving into, and I know there's more I need to see. So hey, I got more to do myself here. So hey, here we go. He's great.